Episode 7. It really is episode 7 now.
This time, real.
Yeah.
It tracks. We're on track.
We are on track. And today we're going to talk about condos.
They're so cute.
All about condos. And you know what? Condos are right for certain people.
Absolutely. That's where you got to start sometimes.
Yeah.
I think finding that right, perfect condo can make the world of a difference.
Yeah, and depending on what point in your life you're at, like a condo is fantastic. I've never owned a condo, but when we lived in a condo for 3 years, I loved it. Life was like kind of simple, and you know, there's a nice simplicity that can come with condos and also complexity, and we're going to talk about all of those things. And the differences between single-family homes and focusing on condos. And I thought it was so funny that in our team meeting today, what did we talk about? Condos. Condos are on the brain right now.
Condos are hot right now, I think, because there has been a huge shift in the market. We saw condo prices go up significantly here in King County. And recently, with the inventory increases and the seasonality of our market, we're noticing that there's just a lot more price cuts going on. And this whole section of real estate is starting to change and shift as we start to incorporate more building of detached accessory dwelling units and ADUs, and people are figuring out ways to condoize those so that they can sell them off and somebody else can live in that space. And that's a little bit more complicated. But I think that condos have kind of been hot topic item lately just because we are seeing so many changes and shifts and people moving, and this is kind of an area where you can get a deal right now.
Mm-hmm. And you know, and if there's a certain price point you're looking at and a condo is the only thing that works for you, like get into the market. Get into the market anyways.
Exactly.
As long as you're getting a good investment, which is why you want to work with a good real estate agent to make sure that if you are buying a condo, it is a good investment, because if you're buying a condo, ultimately it's probably because it's your first step and you want to sell it later. Make sure it has good resale value, and that's all the things that we're going to cover today of how you can figure that out before you buy it and all the things you want to find out about that condo.
I started my investment journey in condos, and we would find things that were under market value that we could add some value to. So we were doing all the renovations in-house, and we spent a lot of time. My husband was the HOA board president of our condo. We learned a lot about condo laws. We learned a lot about working with other people, and it was a great stepping point for us. We eventually were able to roll that equity that we accumulated over a couple of years into buying a single family home. So it does make sense to buy a condo sometimes because it gets your foot in the door, it gets you access to different product types and the ability to start building your portfolio.
It's all about stepping stones. You know, you buy a little bit smaller, you can buy a little bit bigger the next time, get the equity out of like how you did, and get a little bit bigger every single time. You don't always have to go for like the biggest final product when you start out.
I think that for a lot of us in our minds, what we have envisioned is a single family home. And so, and a condo can meet that need. It just isn't going to look like your brick and mortar single family home. But let's talk about what this umbrella of condo means, because I think for a lot of us, we're thinking about multi-story, lots of different people living in one space, but that's not always what a condo entails.
Yeah, there can even be standalone condos where you don't share walls, or there can be a much smaller complex where there's maybe only 6 units, but they're still going to function differently than a single family home, because why? You don't own the whole thing. You don't own the land that the condo is on. It can live really similarly to single family home, but there are just certain restrictions. And I mean, the biggest difference is what's usually associated with a condo?
The HOA.
The HOA, which some people are scared of, but understanding what your HOA provides you and how your HOA is run is going to give you the power behind not being afraid of buying a condo and having that extra, expense associated with your home, because it's going to provide you a lot of the same things that you're going to have to pay for in a single family home, with just some different restrictions around it. And that's kind of what we're going to go over today.
Yeah, so if you're looking at some of those new development, the new development construction that's going on either north or south of King County, a lot of those properties are actually condos because the developer bought a large plot of land and then eventually went and developed certain pieces of it and condoized all of those homes. So while you own the home, you get to utilize the land, but the way that the land is accessed and how it is treated is going to be overseen and managed by the condo. You can also get into something that's much smaller that is a 1-bedroom, 1-bath where you have an elevator and there's a parking garage down below. That also qualifies as a condo. So I think that that's confusing for a lot of people who go out and they look at those $1 million new construction homes and you have to explain to them, yes, this is a single family home, but it's also a condo because you have this HOA that is going to oversee and manage your budget. They are also going to make sure that everything looks kind of similar so that there's not an eyesore, and they're going to manage how you're able to utilize that property.
Right, and depending on, what's covered in your dues, they're going to also manage how that money is spent, whether that's for water, sewage, garbage. Does it cover, the roof? Does it cover the siding? It's going to cover all sorts of different things, and that's what we're going to kind of break down different associations with the price that is with your HOA, because they can vary widely, and sometimes that's scary to people when they see a high HOA, but it's like, wait, let's go over what that covers.
Right.
Because that might actually give you a lot of the things that you're going to need to pay for anyways, but it's being managed by this HOA. Now also, that some of that HOA is going to go towards a reserve that's going to be set aside.
Hopefully there's a reserve.
Hopefully
we put that caveat in there because every condo is managed differently.
And that's understanding what goes into your HOA is going to be into your monthly dues is important.
So the amount of restrictions that a specific HOA has kind of depends on the size of the property itself. So if you're looking at a high-rise building that has multiple units, they're going to have much more stringent rules than somebody who's designed an HOA to cover 2 detached accessory dwelling units in the backyard. Right. Most of what we're discussing today is going to be referred to, we're talking more of the larger condos.
Or condo complexes that, there's even some that look like single family homes but have shared walls and they've got, garages, but the actual complex, the community itself is following HOA guidelines, and that's kind of like what we're talking about today.
Yeah, so the bigger the unit, the more likely the HOA is going to cover the exterior of the property.
The envelope, if you will.
Yes.
The envelope.
And, all properties are going to deteriorate over time. And so what the HOA is required to do is to have somebody come in and assess the building every couple years. And they're going to do a reserve study and check and see how healthy that HOA is. And when we go to write offers as agents, we're going to be asking to see all of these documents so that we know for ourselves, well, what's really going on in this HOA. Because you're not just, your neighbors are now going to be part of your association. You're working with them. It's important to know kind of how many of them are paying their dues and how much money that we have to cover things.
Yeah, because when you are buying a condo, you own the drywall in, and you collectively as the condo association own the rest. And so then the condo and the HOA is responsible for taking care of the rest, and that budget has to be, you have to predict in the future what might be needed to cover outside of the drywall. And that's what those reserve studies are for. That's why you want to have a healthy reserve so that in the future, if there is a large project, hopefully over the last couple of years, monthly, everyone has been contributing to that possible fact. Otherwise, what happens if your monthly dues don't cover something like that. You get slapped with something called a special assessment.
Right.
Which is basically says, hey, we have this big project that's going to happen in the future. It's going to cost X amount. And because of that, we're going to charge each condo unit X amount to pay for that. Because however much you've been paying every month is not going to cover it.
So this happened to us on our first investment property. We bought a condo and we were not well versed in our ability to read these documents and these, so it was a learning curve for
They're
us.
lengthy.
Yes. There's not only the rules that come with it, which can be, 30 to 40 pages long that were established when the condo was built, but on top of that, these studies kind of look a lot like an inspection. After you've done a few inspections, you know how to read an inspection and what items are scary and what aren't.
Yeah.
That happens too with these reserve studies. You understand that every property has a depreciable value. So they can come in and say, okay, the siding will last, the manufacturer is saying that the siding will last for 20 years. We're going to put it in, it's 20 years, it needs to be replaced. What we didn't understand when reading through this document was that even though they're suggesting that it needs to be replaced, that doesn't necessarily mean that the condo has agreed to do that fix, or that the building is actually deteriorating at that rate. It's just kind of a suggested value. So for us, what we didn't understand was that they had put off and put off and put off and put off repaving the entire carport area. And so we had looked through, our agent had told us there weren't going to be any special assessments. Well, when we landed at that first meeting, we found out, oh, this next year we have a special assessment. Everybody needs to pay for the blacktop an additional $5,000, which for us at the time felt like a lot of money. And for other people, it probably felt like a drop in the bucket. But for us, it was very eye-opening to learn, okay, although I have this reserve study and this additional information, probably where I should go next is to the meeting minutes to find out what everybody's talking about, because that's when you're going to learn about what are projects that are coming up or frustrations that specific owners are experiencing that might become something that they will want to work on down the line.
And how did they put that assessment on your unit, that $5,000? How did you have to pay that? Was it broken up over a couple of months? Is it in one lump sum?
No, you could do 3 payments through over 6 months, right? Every other month you would do a prepayment, or you could do the entire amount. And the folks who were on board and were moving things forward and paid their dues, that was great. But we were part of an older unit. They weren't used to having these special assessments. There were tons of meetings, lots of frustration around it. So I think that I believe there was about 15% of the units were delinquent for a couple of years before they eventually paid those fees.
Ah, gotcha.
So even though you tell people they have to pay for something, it doesn't necessarily mean that that's going to come about, or that it's going to be an easy process.
You're right. And as was highlighted in our team meeting this morning, that is something that lenders are going to look at when they are working with either, the listing agent who's going to list a condo or the buyer who is going to buy the condo. They are going to look heavily into the health of the HOA and the condo, and they're going to look to see, has anyone else? It's not just about the unit, right, that you're purchasing. They're looking at the whole building to see, are other people delinquent on their dues, because that is going to affect the overall financeability, is that a word, of the unit you want to buy.
And historically, up until this point, most condos were not financeable through FHA loans. So what Sarah's talking about is there are some condos who have gone through the process of becoming FHA approved. And so if you are somebody who's trying to get into a condo with a low down payment and maybe a higher mortgage payment, it might be really difficult to find a condo property that is actually FHA approved, because they want to make sure that you have the ability to pay for things and that you won't get slammed with special assessments down the road. So what they're doing is they're checking the health, and they are much more stringent around what will qualify and what won't. So you're looking much more at HOAs that are healthier, have more than 10% in their funds to make sure that they can cover larger items. Smaller condos are not going to qualify for an FHA account, and you're going to have to work with your lender about what programs actually do qualify.
Yeah.
So that's kind of a sticky point. You have to make sure that if you're looking at condos with your agent and that's something that you want to have an FHA program, you're going to be limited in your capacity to look at specific items.
Yep. And hopefully the listing agent who has listed that condo has done some of that due diligence ahead of time to let the prospective buyers know that is a possibility, but it's always good to do that research, have your agent do that research ahead of time when you're looking at condos, because you don't want to get too deep into the weeds on a condo that your lender is not going to approve you for.
Right.
I mean, same goes with the single family home, right, for budgeting and all that kind of reasons, but HOAs just have a little bit more restrictions around that.
Absolutely. And they're kind of, I like to look at the HOA like a bank account a little bit. So like Sarah said, the idea being that we are paying enough in dues to be able to afford things. There's somebody there that is managing those finances. Now, depending on the quality of your HOA board, that person could be really good at managing finances or really terrible at managing finances.
Yes.
And so that can lead to legal disputes. And when an HOA has to take on these legal disputes between their homeowners or an insurance policy or a payout, or maybe even your manager stealing funds from the account, that can cost your building quite a bit of money.
The mismanaged HOAs are no good.
They're no good.
They're no good.
In fact, there are specialty lawyers that just help you go through HOA documents and make sure that you're on the right page. So when I have a client who's very nervous about stepping into a condo and the HOA documents are confusing, then what I would do as a next step is say, hey, why don't we run this by our legal team and just have them take a look at it and make sure that it looks sound to them, because the numbers only tell us so much. It gives us just the board and the assessors are not on the same page, you guys, so it's confusing to know how healthy they are.
And we should also point out that if you are, a prospective buyer who's going to looking at buying a condo, there in the contract that you would offer the seller, there is a section that has an HOA review period that allows you as the buyer to get a certain amount of time to review the HOA docs. Now, usually, depending on how you're strategically making your offer, that timeline can be a different amount, because sometimes the seller and the listing agent have been very proactive and they've gotten all the HOA documents available and they have it out there ahead of time for prospective buyers to see. So hopefully you've already reviewed and poured over the HOA docs as much as you can to your best understanding and comfortability, and maybe you're not utilizing that entire HOA review period. But I've had many situations where clients have made offers on condos and we don't even have all of those documents available. So we're putting in that HOA review period, because you're not going to purchase a condo without all that information available to you. So basically it acts sort of in the same way as an inspection contingency would. You say, hey, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, we're going to take 3-5 days to get an inspection, get our look under the rug of what's happening in there, and we're going to review that information. Same thing with HOA. It's basically an inspection contingency for your HOA. You get time, because I have clients who are like, hey, there's not that much information about the HOA. I'm really nervous about buying a condo. I've never purchased a condo. I want to look further into it. Right. Well, you get that HOA review period, and we get the documents after we're under contract and we find something big, hairy, and scary, there's going to be a special assessment that wasn't listed. Yeah, we're backing out. Or hitting my microphone. I'm very gesticulating today. For the people listening at home, Sarah's gesticulating a lot.
No, she's big on her hands.
I'm big on my hands with HOAs.
And we've walked away from so many different condos just because of that. You look at some of the lifespan and the things that they have put off, and you tell yourself, okay, even though this isn't in the meeting minutes, I have over $200,000 worth of repairs that have not been dealt with in the last 5 years. And it looks like we only have about $50,000 in reserves. This is a problem. This is a problem. Even if they decide to take on one or two, they don't have enough in the reserves to be able to do that based on your HOA payments per month alone. It's going to require some additional funds. How much? No idea. But this is something that I think you should walk away from, or this is something that I feel like is not going to come down the pipeline within the next 5 to 10 years.
Yeah. So have peace of mind, buyers. There is a contingency within the offers that we structure for you that allows you the time to look at that.
Yeah.
Now, with anything that's, a seller can, they can counter back on that timeline, but any good listing agent will understand that you need to be able to look at the information for an HOA.
And you're in the buyer's market right now.
Especially for condos.
For condos, yeah.
Especially
I
for
was
condos.
looking at the stats here on the Northwest MLS, and we have more condos than we have had over the last 12 months that are available for purchase. We're seeing them sell at about 95% of their price point, and it looks like there's about 3 months of inventory, meaning that if nothing else were to hit the market, we would run out of product in the next 3 months. And here in King County, that's a really long time. That's average for most districts and places throughout the US. But here, our sellers are used to being able to sell their properties within a month tops. So this notion that they might have to sit out there and wait for 3 months, that can be a lot to take on, especially if they're still paying the mortgage and the HOA dues themselves.
So some opportunity there.
Yes.
If you're in the market for a condo, first time home buyer options there.
Woohoo!
We love that. We love options. Okay, I think we've been sort of covering like do's and
Don'ts.
and just like for the people at home, like do's, DUES.
Thank you.
Do's,
Yep.
Thank you.
Yep.
Sometimes puns don't work on podcasts because it's not spelled out.
The do's. We paid the do's.
Yeah. Do's and don'ts,
and
red
the don'ts
flags.
and red flags
Yeah.
that we would look for. I think one of the things that we brought up is that we have come across condos that have 0 dues, which is unusual.
We see that more in new construction.
Right.
Usually
And-
like some sort of a detached situation, or maybe it's like 5 units and, they took over a single family lot and they've just rezoned it and been like, made it into 5 units.
Which would be great. Yeah. And some of the HOAs that I've seen for new construction, you're looking at like $25 a month. And so the less you're paying in dues means the more economic responsibility you have towards your house. So when I see a low dues amount, I know that we're probably just looking at landscaping and snow removal for each of the homes. But if we have something that's much higher, like our cabin out on Lake Cochise, it's got a higher dues. That's because there are so many other things that they're taking care of. There's their firefighter department and the boat launch and the clubhouse. So the more you're spending on your HOA means the more benefits that you should have.
Hopefully.
Hopefully.
Which is why you look into what your HOA
Hopefully.
covers.
Right.
Because it's probably going to have a lot of them will have like sewer, water, garbage, insurance, earthquake insurance, which is really going to bump up your price. If you see super high dues, but listed under there is earthquake insurance, that's instantly going to bump up your HO dues a lot. Like road maintenance, which is a very loose term, so hopefully you can find out more what that covers. As what are you maintaining on said roads? Sometimes they'll go into more detail of what that is, but understanding that can help. I always find that one sort of like a nebulous.
And there's some that even offer, gyms or other.
There's a pool on the property or something like that, and that's going to also have its own insurance, things like that.
Maintenance.
And maintenance, yes.
And needs. So the more amenities that a property has, the more you will expect to pay in HOA dues. That is in addition to your mortgage. And I think that that's kind of nice because up front you already know, okay, here's what I'm paying for my mortgage and all of the extras that are associated with it. Whereas a first-time home buyer doesn't actually know, okay, what am I going to have to pay for electricity, water, gas, garbage? Those are all in addition to what the mortgage payment's going to be. So it's kind of like, all right, we're going to an all-inclusive resort. I know how much I'm going to pay every single day. because that's their set price. Whereas if you're buying just a single family home, you're headed on your own adventure. Who knows?
Which can also come with its own impending special assessments, but it's just you, yourself, and I taking care of those, and also choosing when to take care of those. That's the difference.
Yeah, if you don't really mind having water dripping from your ceiling, like that's a personal choice. That's on you.
But with that, and I've counseled some of my clients, who have looked at buildings that are more all-inclusive, and they have a gym, and they've got, a sauna and a hot tub, and I'm like, well, are you someone who wants to utilize, or, they've got like kitchen spaces or living room spaces. Are you someone who wants to utilize those things? No? Maybe not paying for maybe not the building for you that's gonna, because that is definitely, something that people are looking for. But let's find a building that has the other inclusive things you want paid for. Like you just want your sewage, your garbage, water. Some of them have like high-speed internet and your snow removal of your streets. Is that all you really need? Great. Let's find you a place like that. You're not going to use all the other bells and whistles that are offered that you'd be paying for otherwise.
And it's expensive. It's not cheap. And so I think it's knowing kind of what your product looks like and what it is that you want it to cover, which is so important.
Yeah.
The last piece about this is that condos tend to have a lot more restrictions. So as an investor, it was really important to me that when I looked at condos, my agent knew that it was going to be an investment property, because not all condos will allow you to have shorter long-term rentals. They have a specific amount of the units are going to be just by the property.
A certain number of units have to be owner occupied.
Owner occupied.
Rental cap. We're looking at a rental cap.
God, I had a big
because as an investor, you're probably looking to buy the property to maybe you want to live in it short term and you want to rent it later. Well, you first want to know, can you rent that property? How many units in the complex are rentable? Is there a wait list to get on that? And how long do you as the owner need to live in the unit before you can rent it? Maybe you can rent it right away. Fantastic. What a perfect investment opportunity. You never need to live there. But if you're someone who wants to like kind of house hack, live in it for a little bit, rent it later, move on to your next thing, maybe you're okay with a 1 year owner occupied, rule.
Yes, but if the rental cap is completely full and you know that that's something that you want to do down the line, I would definitely reconsider, because you never know how long those other people are going to be in those units, and or if the HOA is going to take those rules and regulations and adjust them.
Right. Or how long the wait list is.
Exactly.
Other people may have the same ideas of you and they're like, oh, I'll just live here for 2 years, I'll get on the wait list. So that wait list could be, miles long already.
And that wait list could be adjusted if the condo is looking to go through the process being approved by FHA. They want to see less and less of those being rented.
Yeah, because they want to look at owner occupieds, because it's more stable, essentially. You've got the same people living in there, the same people paying monthly, they're reliable quotes, all that entails.
Yeah.
Also, the little finer detail, like, are there pet restrictions?
Oh my gosh, so many pet restrictions.
Pickles could not live
is not
in
allowed.
most
Yeah,
condos.
no, pickles would not be
for
allowed.
you listeners out there, is Emily's gigantic Bernie Doodle? Bernedoodle?
Saint Berdoodle.
Saint. Oh, that's right. You gotta add the saint because that makes it much larger. Pickles could not live in a condo. Most condos have a size restriction for dogs.
35 pounds.
And 35 pounds, y'all, is not that
big.
much.
No exotic pets either.
Yeah. So things like that, right off the bat. And that information for, buyers out there, that information is listed. And if you can't find it easily on the listing, your agent can, because we know where to look for it and we can tell you right away, like, yes, there's a rental cap, or no, there's a rental cap, or restrictions, cats and dogs only.
Right.
If you've got a bunny, you can't live with bunny in your condo. So those two things right away is the first things to look at. Are there a rental cap? Is that important to you? Are there pet restrictions? Because that's going to tell you right away, should you look further?
Absolutely.
Because you're not going to get rid of your bunny because you want the condo. Right? You better not.
The bunnies live here. They'd be fine.
I say this because my friend Jackie, shout out Jackie if you listen, has multiple bunnies.
Oh, cute. Are they the floppy-eared ones?
They are. I've always wanted a bunny. Anyways, I digress.
So what I would say is by owning and renting and renovating and working with HOAs, what I learned is that if you are going to buy a condo, you're probably going to live with a lot more restrictions than you would if you bought a single family house. And some people really benefit from restrictions. They like to know, okay, what do I need to pay so that I have everything covered and I have peace of mind? And who do I talk to if something breaks down? And what are our preferred vendors for certain things? And who's going to take care of the snow removal? That's great for some people.
Yeah. And some people like it because it's slightly lower maintenance, right? You're not taking care of the entire envelope, like inside out of the home. You are responsible for paying for a lot of it, but you kind of get a little bit of peace of mind that some aspects are going to be taken care of for you. It can be a little bit simpler way of living, and that's great for some people.
Absolutely, especially if you are a busy working individual, or let's say you're downsizing and you've had this single family house for a really long time. You're going to be traveling a lot. You want to have a space that's taken care of, but you're not always going to be there. It's great for that. For me right now, I just found that working within the HOAs was so restrictive that it just didn't work for me because I want to be in control. I have a control issue, Sarah. So it didn't afford me as much control, but I am very grateful for having gone through the process so that now that when I do it with my clients, I know exactly what it is that I'm looking for and what are the red flags that I've dealt with in the past that they might have to deal with.
Yeah, and you can still, I hope we don't scare you away from condos because you can still get that single family home life in certain condos and complexes. They are totally out there. I've had a client purchase a house. The house lived like a single family home.
Yeah.
You just are responsible for living like other people have, you all have to live the same because there are restrictions.
You're in a community.
You're in a community.
You are. Yeah. You're amongst other people.
And even single family homes will have HOAs that have restrictions, and the home itself is standalone and you can, pretty much live like a single family home, but the community itself is responsible to HOAs. So HOAs are not just for what we call condos, right? The community itself can have restrictions and covenants and dues that you pay and all of that.
Yeah.
Yeah. A great first home purchase.
Yeah. And some of them are really darling, you guys.
Yes, there's so many cute condos out there. You just have to understand how the HOA is working for you. And there's some seriously cute condos. And I hope that we have given you good information to reconsider maybe the condo as your first step. If you were thinking that. Well, thank you all for listening to episode 7 of She's Got the Keys.
We're so glad you guys are here. I'm very grateful.
I know, and I can't believe it's almost the end of 2024. What happened? Where'd it go? Well, episode 7 done. Thank you for listening.
Bye.
Bye.